How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of the Black Label Bodybuilding Podcast. Today we've got on Scotland's newest IFBB Pro, Mr. Andy Scott, aka AMS Muscle. How are you getting on? How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. So I've just started what we consider to be a reverse or a rebound diet, however you want to call it. I think there's different names for well, everyone's got a different name for something when it comes to bodybuilding. But yeah, moving into the reverse phase just now. So we're keeping it very, very, very conservative by just starting out with 200 calories per week addition, which for a super heavyweight bodybuilder is dust. But our plan of action is to reverse slowly over the next 12 to 13 weeks. And then by the time it's time to start really pushing, I'm going to be in a really, really good position. So it's something I've never done. Usually when I come off the back of a prep, I just skyrocket my calories, get back into hard training again. But this time we're taking just more of a intelligent, well, I would say intelligent, that's probably the wrong word, but there's more thought. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, professional. Yeah. So, and on that note, like being a professional now has definitely added more in the way of like motivation and discipline. So I feel like I'm more under the limelight now than I was before. That's myself. That's looking at myself limelight, and I feel like I need to treat this more as a job now rather than just what was like a very time no, like a hobby that takes up all my time.
Yeah. I mean, being a competitive bodybuilder feels like a full-time job that just doesn't pay any of the bills. And you go pro, and I mean, not that you're suddenly getting a massive paycheck, I'm sure, but now it actually is a job as well. So it's a different thing. So I guess my first question is just like, how does it feel? Not the X's and O's, but just like emotionally, kind of mentally to have gone to that level and achieved that thing that I presume you've wanted for a very long time.
Can you repeat that, mate? You cut off a wee bit.
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to basically ask, how does it feel now to be a pro? Like more of the mental side of things. After so long of I've been following your journey for a long time, and you're not someone who's like just done road to pro in a year. It's been a long, gradual process.
Yeah.
What does that payoff feel like?
Yeah, so it's been 12. I've been competing for 12 years. So I started in 2012, my first show when I was 19. So I think I just said to you before we started recording is that it feels very surreal. But also it's a part of me that my first coach, Graham Park, I remember he told his girlfriend at the time, he was like, he'll turn pro one day. So I've kind of always had it in the back of my head that it will happen. And it's kind of like 5 years before it actually happened, I'd achieved it. Does that make sense? Like in my head, I'd already been there. So it's kind of like just business as usual. But then a part of me is also like, fuck, I'm in the most competitive bodybuilding federation league in the world now. And I'm right back to the bottom. I have no misconceptions as to where I actually am now. Like I'm right back to the bottom again in a league where it's dominated by some of the most genetically elite human beings on the planet. If they weren't bodybuilding, they'd probably be, playing like in the NFL or playing high level rugby or whatever, you know what I mean, or the Olympics. So it's going to be a task, but I do truly believe that I have the shape to do well in a pro show and eventually get to the Olympia one day. Whether that takes me 3, 5, 7 years, I'm willing to put in the graph because I'm sure you're the same, but like bodybuilding still fascinates me even to this day. And that's, 16 years of training and it still fascinates me. I love listening to like other people's opinions on things, and primarily with training's always interests me a lot. So yeah, it's just an evolution now, and now it's the bar is even higher now. So it's exciting. It's exciting more than anything else. But when you see like, for instance, like the M Pro's on today, and you see the likes of Crizzo and stuff, and I've stood next to Crizzo, and it's just like he makes me look like I'm 12 years old. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a long road, but I'm sure I'll get where I want to be.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, to take it back slightly, I've followed your amateur career for quite a long time, right? Since I remember when you did like the PCA NABA British that season, which was I think the first one where I really was like, right, this guy's fucking good, right? But since then, you've not really done what some people criticize modern pros for and kind of going for the quote unquote easy shows. I don't think easy pro qualifiers really exist, right? I think that's a daft thing. But you did things like the Arnold Amateur in the US and like these bigger shows, the UK Arnold, etc. Was that like an intentional move so that you could like be at the pro level starting as a pro, or is it just like you want to make it hard as possible for yourself? Like, was that an intentional thing?
Yeah, 100%. So I never wanted to win my pro card at like an easy show. I wanted to fight for it. I wanted to go up against guys who they themselves would be good pros as well. And I think in Spain at that show, that was definitely the case. Like the top 5 there, I feel are all capable of eventually being amazing pros. And some of the guy that came second to me, a Swiss guy, I didn't catch his name, but he didn't even fit in the tanning tent. He was that big. So it was one of those ones where I was like, wow, this is what I wanted. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't nervous going at that show. When I saw everyone, because I was like, right, this is what I want. I want to be up against some monsters, and that's exactly what I got. And I've stood next to Andrew Jack, who's now 5th in the world. Like you said, the Arnold UK was pretty stacked as well. So it was definitely an intentional thing because I want to. It's more of an indicator to myself as to where I can possibly be, and if I'm good enough to win pro qualifiers like that, then there is an inkling there that I'm going to be a good pro down the line. So I think, but like you said though, no pro qualifier is easy, and I think people throw around the whole everyone's got a pro card nowadays. So I was like, it's still 1%. You know what I mean? It's still 1% that have the pro cards. So yeah, it's like I said, it's been 12 years. I haven't been trying for my pro card for 12 years, to be fair. I think my first attempt at a pro qualifier was the Arnold UK in 2021. But again, that was also intentional. Like at one point, my biggest goal in competing was to win the NABA Mr. Universe. And for a long time, people were saying to me, like, just forget that goal and just try and turn pro in the IFBB. But I don't know, I'd always had that at the back of my head for a long, long time. And unfortunately, I only came 6th in 2019 with that. But that was my last show of that season, and my body was falling to bits by that point at the end of the season. So, but yeah, it was definitely intentional.
Yeah, so you've kind of mentioned there that you plan on eventually going to the Olympia, which is obviously that's an amazing goal to have, and even being able to say that and it be a serious thing is I can imagine how cool that feels, right?
Yeah.
But what's the short term goal? You said you're reversing out now, but I'm not like pressing you for your pro debut kind of thing, but like, is it going to be a soon thing? Is it going to be a couple of years off? What's the next step?
Definitely next year. 100% it'll be next year. So the plan is there's a UK Pro this year in London on the 14th of September, I believe it is. So hopefully there's another UK Pro around the same time next year. And then, because I'd like to do my pro debut in front of a home crowd, it just means, all the boys can come down from Glasgow and Aberdeen and all the way over to the UK as well, come down and see. So, and then I want to schedule another maybe 2-3 shows after that as well, purely just to get my face in the circuit. Like I want to do the rounds. I think my criticism of pros nowadays is that they do too few shows. Sorry. So you got guys that like they take 18 months off and they do one pro show. Like that to me seems like a waste. Like your body's good to go for, well, in most cases, your body's good to go for 2, 3, 4 shows in a season. And I think a lot of pros aren't taking the steps to get in front of judges and things like that and get their name out there. And that's what next year's about. It's about standing in front of pro panels, standing in front of judges numerous times to just show them, look, this is where I'm at now. Look, I'm willing to put myself out there into these like classes and these shows that are filled with just the genetic elite, and hopefully over time, they see that commitment to the pro league, and they see that commitment to, better myself as a pro. And it is a bit cliche, but, they do say you have to do the rounds. You have to, earn the right to win a pro show, essentially, in terms of time. So that's the plan next year. It's definitely the UK Pro, and then probably the French Pro, and then either Prague or Romania, or both. Just depends on what's happening.
Yes, no, amazing. I think I definitely look forward to seeing that go down. And I presume that you're still with Nick Vandal. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Vandal,
been with him for an Vandal. You've been with him for a very long time. I'm kind of interested in how that relationship works, and also, how valuable clearly it's been to you to stay with someone for a very long time in a game where people like to coach up, right? It's quite a normal thing to stick with a coach for 6 months. You're looking at like years down the line with someone who doesn't have a massive name in the industry. Just interested in doing.
Yeah, so I've been with Nick for 10 years. I was with Patrick Chua for 18 months between the middle of the first lockdown until after the Arnold UK, which was September 21. So that's the only time I've switched coach. Graham kind of moved away from bodybuilding, so that doesn't really count. But yeah, I've been with Nick for 10 years. And for me, like, number one, I don't care about a coach's standing in the industry, and neither does Nick. So it's, we've got that mindset squared away. I trust Nick. Nick's very brutal. He's very blunt, which I like. I like people just telling it as it is. I don't like being complimented. Well, if you want to compliment me, fair enough, but I also want my flaws to be pointed out and things like that. And Nick's good at just telling it as it is. And obviously he's insanely knowledgeable, very, very, very smart guy, and he knows my body inside out. And the dynamic we have isn't probably like most coaching partnerships. For instance, I'll write out my own training plan. I'll write out my own nutrition plan. I'll decide what I want to do anabolic and PED wise, and then I'll relay that past Nick, and Nick will say, yeah, that's fine, or no, maybe try it this way. It's a great relationship we have, and it's definitely not one that I want to walk away from. So it's, he's seen me right. I've won a lot with him. I've won, obviously, my pro card at a very, very tough pro qualifier. I've won both the NABA and PC British overalls, and done really well with him in other shows as well. So I owe a lot to Nick, and he'll, for the time being anyway, for the foreseeable future, he'll definitely be the staple in my bodybuilding career, and I don't want to go to anyone else. I know there's a lot of coaches in the British scene right now who are doing very, very well, but that doesn't. I'm kind of like, after being with Patrick, not that I didn't enjoy being with Patrick, but I needed the ability to see my coach in person. That for me is just a huge, huge thing. And if I want to, I can go see Nick. I can go see him in the gym. He can come up to me, and that goes a long way for me. Because being able to see someone's physique in person definitely is superior to photos. Now, obviously, it doesn't always work that way. Like, sometimes you can have an incredibly good coach and you can absolutely do fine and do very, very well with just photos. But I'd like to have the option of being able to see my coach. And that's another thing that played into not only how well me and Nick worked, but also going back to Nick after being with Patrick as well.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think it shows the value of that partnership being there. But I think it's also testament to some extent of you being a very successful coach yourself, right? Because you're laying out, as you said, you're doing your own nutrition and diet and kind of getting his input on it.
Yeah.
So with that being said, how did you approach this prep? Like, what did you think went well, and kind of what strategies did you use, and like, were they different from previous preps?
Yeah, I think Nick and I could probably agree that this is probably, compared to, I've been with Nick since I was a junior, so compared to previous preps, like, this prep was a piece of piss. I don't want to say that too brazenly, but it compared to other preps, it was relatively easy. Like, the fat came off me very, very well. The biggest I know exactly why this prep went so well, and that was because I was able to sleep. Every prep I've done prior to this one, sleep has always ended up being horrendous towards the end of the prep, where I have full-blown insomnia where I probably don't sleep for days. And that's probably down to me mismanaging certain supplements, PEDs, caffeine, things like that. So over time, and I think we found a good formula for me to be able to actually get to and stay asleep. And that's definitely brought about a new look. It's actually it's a fresh look, literally, because I am fresh and I'm able to recover from my sleep. Whereas honestly, mate, before I would go to bed at 11. This is just say like 4 weeks out from my show. This pretty much happened almost every single time. I'd be 4 weeks out from my show. I'd go to bed at 11. I wouldn't be remotely tired at all. I'd force myself to sleep for maybe an hour, 2 hours, and then I'd wake up at 1 and I'd be bright as a button from 1 o'clock. So are you okay to talk about PEDs on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. So I don't use Tren anymore. So Tren acetate is gone. I'll never touch it ever again. I think I fell for the, that you have to use Tren and you have to use this, you have to use that. I kind of fell into that trap when I was a junior, and I always just, you have to have it in because it makes you look better, and it doesn't. Obviously, person dependent. I've got clients who love being on it. I've got clients who look worse on it. It just depends, obviously, on the body. But for me, it definitely, the 5% extra I'm getting from it, I'm losing 10% because of my sleep. So it's definitely something I'll never ever use again. And that was probably the biggest factor that contributed to the sleep being bang on this time round. There still were some bad nights, and I've used cannabis oil for years. Cannabis oil has definitely helped me get to sleep and stay asleep. But in the off season, I have no problem getting to sleep. I can sleep for 12 hours in the off season. It's purely just those last few months, maybe 6 to 8 weeks out from my show, where I start to see sleep starting to take an impact. But that was the biggest change in this prep compared to others.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I'd say myself, sleep's the biggest thing that I struggle with prep. My last one, it felt like a breeze other than sleep. Never quite as bad as what you said, but not far off it, and that's interesting. What made you decide to try a prep without Tren? Because it's quite a bold move, because you're right in that it just feels like that's what you do. You start prepping, so you put Tren in. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, this is what I said to Nick. I was like, what's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing, expecting different results. And I know, if you look at the literature, if you look at just the empirical evidence from clients, like, Tren does impact sleep. So let's take it out, or let's not use it, and let's see how the sleep goes. And it went very, very well. So that was purely just the thought process going into it there. It was just trying different things. And like, on that note as well, like, before both shows, we'd done a burger and fries the night before. I've never done that before. We also used a little bit of diuretics this time around as well. I've never done that before either. So yeah, all these wee things, just trying different methods, brought the look that we brought to both the Scottish and the Pro qualifier. And I was saying to myself, it's, if I'm going to do this again, and third time lucky trying to win my Pro card, then I need to try something different. And the difference was on a PED side of things, and realizing that my body needs a lot more food than I was giving it prior. So my food my training day food went as low as 3,100. Some people do off seasons on that, so that's not low at all. And again, I fell into the trap in previous preps of, I need to be feeling like shit. I need to not be able to get out of bed in the morning because I'm so fucked. And that's not the case. It's not the case. Don't get wrong, you need to suffer in a bodybuilding prep at some point. There needs to be some aspect of relative suffering. But as I've gotten bigger, as I've added more muscle, essentially I get away with a lot less.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I think it kind of shows, like, when it comes to bodybuilding, it's about doing what you need to do to get the best version of your physique on stage, not about ticking this list of, like, to get on stage you have to have taking Tren, you know,
Yeah.
gone zero carb, blah 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 blah. No, I think that's good, and yeah, it's being creative with it, and that's part of the fun part, right? Is figuring that shit out, is doing all the
Yeah.
troubleshooting.
Yeah.
So not to stay too much on PD side, but if you took the Tren out, did you use anything else to kind of try and compensate for that change in anabolics, or was it just literally a case of the same stuff you did before, but just minus that?
No, I pretty much, other than the Tren, I pretty much done what I usually do. Probably ran Masteron a wee bit higher than I usually do. I usually run that around, like, all honesty, like I don't go higher. I didn't go higher than 400 in previous preps with Mast. Went up to 750 with Mast, and Primo around 600. So usually in years gone by, it'd be, I wouldn't even have testing towards the end. So just say 4 weeks out, it'd be Primo, Tren, and orals. That's kind of usually kind of where my anabolics ended up. But this time round, we kept in a low dose test. 750 Mast was the highest that went, and 600 Primo was the highest that went. And then obviously you got all your ancillaries and all that in there as well. But I picked one oral, so that was Anavar, and we used a little bit of Superdrol on a high day and the 3 days leading up into the show, and that was it in terms of anabolics. It's quite funny when like fellow competitors don't believe me that I ran that low, but again we go back to, you know, these compounds they create inflammation. They're foreign bodies apart from test to the body itself. You know, it takes. Over time, you can develop this look that I think I consider to be like a chemical look. That's what I kind of call it in a physique, where you can tell someone's on a shit ton of drugs, and that's something I wanted to avoid this time. And again, it's just experimentation, just seeing how little we can get away with, and we base that off not only the physique and how it looks in terms of fullness and hardness, blah blah blah, but also like the training as well. So if I was sustaining my training, if I was clearly sustaining muscle mass, then why run higher? So that's basically how we kind of came up to that conclusion. Is we just played about with the dosages until we found that spot where training was sustained, and then just kind of kept it there. If we saw further dips, we'd maybe, I don't know, push mass a little bit harder, or we'd put the Anavar in. Just wee subtle tweaks like that over time definitely impacted the physique being fuller, fresher, less inflamed, and so on. So.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like the Dorian approach, right? It's where it's actually, you know, you're not trying to build anything, so why do you need maximum doses? And it's just about preserving and preserving your training. Would you do you have the same approach in the off season? I mean, I've always seen you as being, because of obviously listening to a lot of stuff you've done, you generally have talked about using less and being more of an emphasis on training. So yeah, is it kind of same idea in your off season there?
Yeah, the only difference would be that tests would be higher and GH would be higher. Yeah. That's the only difference there. So 750 Mast. I think my last cycle, the peak of the last off season cycle would have been 900 test, 750 Mast, and 200 MPP. That's the highest it went, which in retrospect is probably relatively high. What's that? Almost 2 grams. But compared to others and compared to what I've done in the past, it's not too bad. I can definitely get away with less tests, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing in this off season, because I'm in no rush to get where I want to be. Like I said at the start of the recording, there is I will stand on an Olympia stage one day. I know that for a fact, but I just don't know when. But I know it will happen. Just like that's what I said about my pro card. I don't know when, but I know it will happen, and I don't want to fall into the trap that many pros do of being like, right, I'm pro now. Let's add a ridiculous amount of size, and by the time they step on stage, they've blown out their waist, they've ruined their proportions and shape. I definitely don't want to fall into that trap. So I think my look. You've probably seen me compare it. What I say is it's like a classic super heavy, and that's how I kind of want to stay. It's just keep my lines, keep my waist. I've not got the best waist in the world either, which is another factor that's playing into it. Like I don't have a a teeny tiny waist. I have to manipulate the way I pose and stuff to get it to look small, but I'm adamant that I want to keep it as tight as possible. And like I said, if it's going to take me until I'm 40 to get on Olympia stage, I'm willing to make that sacrifice, because I'm still in love with this sport. I'm in love with, everything about it. It's like I said, it's still fascinating. That's all I think about for 99% of the day. So yeah, I definitely think like a slow, steady approach and a conservative approach with regards to PEDs is definitely the way to go for myself, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I think there definitely in the current day will be people who hear 2 grams and say that's a lot. But I think if you've been around the actual body, like, super heavyweight bodybuilding for a while, not that I'm there, but, listen to enough of you guys talk, it's not really, in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of a drop in the ocean compared to some of the stuff that you hear about.
Definitely.
But I mean, so I mean, to transition away from that, because I know that I feel like every bodybuilder ends up just chatting about gear all the time, and I feel bad when I end up doing that myself.
Yeah, same.
With another thing that I've always admired about yourself and followed about yourself with you is your training, because it's always been, I've always seen you as kind of a heavy duty, high intensity, kind of Dorian JP, Luke Sandal-ish, shifting heavy tin kind of, I don't know, it looks fun to me, right? Firstly, how did you get into that style of training? And then how has that evolved over time? Working with Patrick and then leaving him, and obviously going back in control of your own training.
Yeah. So my first coach, Graham, he was a huge fan of Dorian Yates. So I'd already known of Dorian Yates before I met Graham, but never really kind of paid too much attention to him. My idol's actually Frank McGrath, and it still is. But yeah, Graham used to have Blood and Guts playing in the gym. And again, I never really took much notice of it. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But it was one of those ones where still to this day this happens, where young guys look at that and think there's no way you can look like that with one set or one working set. And but you can. And so Graham took me for a training session. It was just a chest session. I think we started with, I remember it so vividly, we started with just a plate-loaded chest press in Bodyworks in Aberdeen. And he ruined me with one set. Like, absolutely destroyed my chest. And I remember phoning my training partner at the time, being like, mate, we are training all wrong. We've been doing this wrong for years. Like, I had literally had DOMs once the set finished. That's how hard he hit me. So, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to him at a very early age. So I met Graham when I was 18. And I think that's stayed with me. And it's kind of, like you said, it's evolved from there. I have trialed different things. I have trialed high volume, super low volume, Menzer style training. I think I've done almost everything. And then when I worked with Patrick, that was the thing I really valued about working with Patrick, was his style of training. Very different, very, what's the word, like, not trendy in terms of, like, right now, and it has been for a long time, is the one working set, one back off, etc. But with Patrick, he's got his own training system called SST, which is insanely high volume, a lot of rest pausing. But no, it's very, very interesting. It's still methods that I incorporate in my off season. In my pre-contest, I kind of taper them out, but and with clients and stuff, is, these intensity increasers that I learned from Patrick and these rest pause techniques have definitely brought about a new look to the physique in terms of just being slightly rounder and fuller and stuff. But I always come back to, like you said, the heavy. What I'll do is I'll do like a Dorian style set on, just say, the hack, and then I'll throw in something after it that's more in line with what Patrick does. So it's kind of like a mismatch of everyone I've worked with, everyone I look up to, and it's kind of like a hybrid style that I kind of do, and I kind of just base things off how I look and stuff like that.
So I've been obviously looking at your Instagram recently, and I know you're doing kind of one working set at the moment for each exercise.
Yeah.
And presumably the goal will be to increase from there. With those sessions, are you like planning out in advance exercises and those rep ranges with kind of, the kind of progressive overload logbooking type approach? or is it a bit more freestyle? And then how will you decide when to up the volume if you do?
Yeah. So everything is logbooked just now. Like I said, it's just one working set per exercise, and then for chest and shoulders, there's only 3 exercises, 2 for both arm exercises, biceps, triceps, sorry, and I think it's 4 for legs, 4 for back. So the goal is to slowly, incrementally put my food up. So slowly reversing up. So 200 calories per week, pretty much all from carbohydrates. And once my food gets to a point where, recovery is in a very, very good spot, then I'll start throwing in, putting the back offsets in, and then I'll slowly resume putting in the intensity increasers, the Patrick Tuor stuff. I'll start sliding all that back in once the food's at a high enough level. But for now, the food is still sitting quite low for me. I'm only 600 calories up from where 700 calories up, from where my diet ended in the prep. So for a super heavyweight, that's next to nothing. And now's not the time to be doing that style of training. And also what I want to try and do is just try and squeeze as much progress in my physique out of the setup as possible. So, if I'm able to grow as much as possible from doing next to nothing training wise, then that's a great place to be, because then that leaves options down the line for me to use and utilize in my training. So that's something that, again, I've never done. Honestly, like in years gone by, if the show was on a Sunday, I'd be back in the gym on the Monday or Tuesday, and I'd be doing drop sets, supersets, everything in my power to just try and get the biggest pump known to man. But this prep and this reverse is far more methodical. I had it all planned out like 10 weeks out from the show. So it's definitely a different approach, and I'm excited to see how things move, because I posted those photos from performance yesterday, and I couldn't believe that I still look like that, because I'm one of those cliche bodybuilders who undoes 6 months of work in like 4 days. So I'm quite glad that I've, gained this new level of discipline going forward. And I think it's going to serve me very, very well over the next year before going to the pro debut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always think myself, when you have that kind of one set approach as well, it does force you to, you've got to make the set count, right? Like there's no two ways about it. And
yeah,
I think, when you're in the position you're in, you can get more out of that. So I've seen you've been going to performance. Is that for a specific reason, or is it just for some variety? Because obviously you have been based in
Future.
Sorry, what is the gym in? Future. Yeah, for ages. That's kind of been your home for a long time. Is it just for a change of pace?
Yeah, just to kind of go see it. So I know Rab, who owns Performance, quite well. So it was just to go see it and scope it out. And it's a great gym. It's a really good gym. It's got that kind of Ultraflex vibes. It's not even finished yet, so there's still a lot of kit that's still waiting to come. So definitely be down there a lot more often. Unfortunately in Scotland, we don't have a vast range of bodybuilding gyms, but the ones we do have are very, very good. So obviously we've got Flex Unit. Future's not a bodybuilding gym, but it's filled with bodybuilding kit. So if you look at it that way, and then we've got obviously the performance gyms, Warehouse in Upper Aberdeen. There is Forge in Inverness. There is a lot there, but obviously it's quite sparse between all the cities and stuff. So when we have the options or the ability to go just for a day and try a new gym, especially a Scottish one, we definitely take the opportunity to do that. We go down to Ultraflex. I've done them quite a few times, or as often as we can, and I've trained with Ant Bales as often as I can as well, just to kind of get different insight into training and things like that, because you can always learn different things. And the more gyms you can visit, the better.
Yeah, it's definitely, from my own perspective, it's been kind of interesting seeing that grow over the past, I've been in it for like 6-7 years, but it's definitely grown. The bodybuilding scene seems to have grown. You can see at the shows, that like PCA Scottish was absolutely like rammed, and so is Granite City was as well, which is great for the scene. But with that being said, how do you feel the kind of UK scene compares to the international scene now that you're starting to do those international shows? You've done a couple of really big ones. They said stood beside Andrew Jack when he turned pro. I mean, that's a bit of an exception. But by and large, yeah, how do you think that comparison is? Because I think there's at least it's something that gets talked about a lot is the kind of you should compete outside of Scotland because it's a different game. So what's it like to compete outside the UK? Is that is it the same kind of thing, or do you think we're kind of on a par?
I think Scotland's getting there. I still think in Scotland there's, I don't want to say stigma. It's probably too strong a word, but I don't think we look at bodybuilding the same way the English do. I don't know why. I don't know why the culture is slightly different. There seems to be just more people interested in fitness and bodybuilding down south. I'm not sure why that is, but it is slowly changing. Obviously, being a coach myself and a PT for 8 years, I am noticing more people coming into the fitness industry and not necessarily competing for bodybuilding, but there is more people that are taking pride in their appearance and their health and wanting to grow and get strong and things like that. There definitely is a shift in the popularity of it. And as the UK as a whole, I do see us being on par with America one day, because obviously the American fitness industry has been gigantic since the mid-'80s. So, we were behind for a long time. But in terms of gyms, in terms of nutrition, supplementation, I think we're on par with some of the heavy hitters in the world, like the Americans, the Canadians, Eastern Europeans. I'd say we're all the Middle Eastern guys as well. I think the UK is definitely a powerhouse with bodybuilding. Just now we've got a lot of guys. Obviously, Samson's top 3 in the world. We've got a lot of guys at Olympia. Got a lot of girls at Olympia as well. So, I think the scene and the popularity of competing in the UK and Scotland as a whole is definitely on the up. And hopefully, like I consider myself just a normal guy. I'm just I just love the sport that I compete in, and if that gets more people, more boys and girls into bodybuilding in Scotland, then that's mission accomplished for me, because it's an amazing thing. And I think there's a lot of, especially in Glasgow. I think I'm kind of going off topic here, but especially in Glasgow, there seems to be a lot of 18 to 30s men who don't really have much direction, and I'm certain that bodybuilding would definitely be a very, very positive thing in their life if they look down that avenue. So if I can be an ambassador for, I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but if I can be an ambassador for Scottish bodybuilding and UK bodybuilding as a whole, then that's kind of mission accomplished for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely see you as that for Scotland. I think I speak for many guys when I say that, like, we're all just fucking relieved it's finally happened, because we want that to happen, because we want Scottish bodybuilding to go to that level, and seeing that it's there, and you're the guy who's been there for the longest. Although I did for a minute worry that your apprentice Greg was gonna get there first. Obviously,
he'll hate that you called him the apprentice.
Well, I mean, you coached him through from you know what I mean. And obviously, you guys were going neck to neck a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it's really good that we've kind of finally got that representation. I know that there are other IFBB pros, but none of them are competing right now. So, but yeah, next question was going to be actually about, and then we'll wrap up, I promise. But you've obviously announced that you've signed with Tbjp Nutrition, which again, it's like an absolute powerhouse in the UK bodybuilding scene. I mean, it makes total sense with your training style and your approaches, but very much clearly aligning with Jordan's. How did that come about, and how does that feel? Kind of.
Yeah. So I've known Jordan personally and Corinne for about 10 years now, just over 10 years. Jordan was at my first British win, so I didn't meet him there, but there was like correspondence back and forth. I think 2013, 2012 was when Jordan was really taking off in his coaching, and I'm sure you remember. Like, I'm not. Have you been coached by Jordan, or was it just Cuba?
No, I just missed that. Just Cuba.
Aye. So at one point I think everyone was coached by Jordan. So I've known him for a long time, and I've used the supplements for pretty much as long as they've been around. And like you said, my training style, I look up to Jordan. I look up to a lot of guys that he has under his wing. Like, for instance, like Kuba, what he's done with his physique and his business, and Nathan and Sass, James Hollingshead. I'm not sure James is with him anymore, but he was at one point. Luke, when he was still here. All these guys that I looked up to coming up as a junior and as an adult as well, as a Masters class. And like you said, it just made sense. And honestly, mate, I reached out to Jordan. I just said to him, I was like, look, I didn't want to reach out as an amateur because the roster that they have, it's ridiculous. I mean, you've got Meg, who's now at the Olympia, and you've got Kuba, you've got Olympians in there, you've got pro show winners, you've got some serious contenders that are part of that company. And I felt as an amateur, I didn't feel I was worthy of asking for or approaching him about sponsorship. But I messaged Jordan, and I just said, look, if there's any opportunities for your company, you're the first that I thought of. And he sent my contract with about 10 minutes of me asking. So he was obviously quite happy to get me on board. So yeah, that was a huge thing for me. And I'm now part of a very, very reputable company that everyone in British bodybuilding knows and world bodybuilding knows as well. So yeah, I'm delighted with that. And I held off for many years with regards to sponsorships. My kind of ethos is, you shouldn't have to sell your soul for a tub of protein. So having to do, 40 million posts a day just to get your 40 quid tub of protein, I felt that building my own brand, the AMS Muscle brand, is where my energy should have been placed into. And by doing that, I've got quite a decent following on Instagram. I've got a decent following on YouTube. And I think all these things, including winning the pro card, has obviously tied into the fact that, I've got companies like Tbjp who are willing to take me on as an athlete. So my thought process with regards to sponsorship kind of paid off in that sense. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Everything we've talked about over the last nearly 45 minutes is all on the same vibe, which is being patient, not rushing it, being kind of having some modesty about it. Yeah, it's very Scottish, isn't it? Really, it's,
yeah, exactly.
Just plodding along. Yeah. No, thank you very much for joining me, man. I guess I'll use this last bit to say if there's anything that you want to plug or share, that's your cue, obviously, to put your discount codes in and whatever.
Yeah, so Tren discount code is Andy10, all caps. And Instagram, AMS Muscle, YouTube, AMS Muscle. What else do I have? I've got TikTok now, but there's nothing really on that just yet. So I'm going to use TikTok just to kind of post like big lifts and stuff like that. And yeah, you'll find me on any social media platform as AMS Muscle. So,
all right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to hit the stop button on the recording, and then we'll chat to you for a couple of minutes. All right.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Thanks for having me on. It means a lot that you're wanting to listen to me chat for 45 minutes.
No, absolutely. There was no one better that I wanted to get it on. Obviously, tried to arrange this before you turned pro, and then I said it would be your first interview as a pro, and here we are. So there we go, did it. All right, cheers, and thanks everyone for watching. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it, and there's plenty more to come.
Cheers, guys.